Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the epic, truly unparalleled story of a man whose business success and spiritual integrity absolutely redefined what it means to be wealthy. When we think of massive wealth today, our minds instantly go to modern tech giants or Wall Street titans, right? But history holds the story of a merchant so successful, his peers literally used to say the very dust in his hands turned to gold. But here's the kicker. His legacy isn't just about how much money he raked in, it's about his impeccable honesty and his radical, mind-blowing generosity. Let's start by contrasting our modern metrics of billionaire success with this remarkable historical figure. Today, we mostly measure wealth by what people accumulate, right? Their net worth, stock portfolios, massive assets. But Abdurrahman bin Auf operated on a totally different wavelength. His caravans literally spanned thousands of camels, carrying goods all across the Arabian Peninsula. But his ultimate metric of success? It wasn't what he kept locked away in vaults. It was measured by what he accumulated and then radically distributed to those in need. And that brings us to a fascinating question that really hooks into his legendary status. Who exactly was this man whose wealth was so unimaginably vast that, upon his passing, his inherited gold had to be physically broken apart with axes just to hand it out? It's a totally mind-boggling image, isn't it? Well, to understand how he built an empire that required literal axes to divide, we've got to go back to the very beginning. Section 1. The Merchant of Mecca. Abdurrahman was born about 10 years after Prophet Muhammad, into the respected Banu Zuhra tribe. From a really young age, he shadowed his father, absorbing all the intricate details of the leather and perfume trade that stretched all the way to Yemen and Syria. But as you can imagine, life in ancient Arabia was incredibly harsh. A devastating tragedy struck when his father was killed in a desert raid, which was a common but brutal reality back then. Suddenly, this young boy was forced to shoulder immense responsibility. He had to step up, take over a massive family business, and protect his family's honor, stepping into the shoes of seasoned merchants way before his time. Now, what's really fascinating about his early success is exactly how he survived in that ruthless environment. The older established merchants definitely doubted him at first. They whispered that he was way too young, that his business was going to collapse in a matter of months. But he didn't overcome those doubts with cutthroat tactics or shady pricing. Nope. He used immense patience and unshakable trustworthiness. His absolute honesty quickly became his greatest capital. People started to realize that a deal with this young guy meant complete security. He wouldn't cheat, he wouldn't lie, and slowly but surely, those caravans just grew larger and larger. Section 2. The Call of Faith. During one of his massive trade journeys down to Yemen, he crossed paths with an old, wise monk. And this monk gave him a really eerie, powerful prophecy. He said, "When he appears, support him, and give him my greetings." The monk was talking about the arrival of the final prophet, predicting it would happen soon in Abdurrahman's home city of Mecca. At the time, Abdurrahman just took it in, not fully grasping how quickly those exact words would completely reshape his destiny. So the minute he arrives back in Mecca, he finds the whole city just buzzing with the message of Muhammad. Remembering that monk's prophecy, he immediately sought out his closest, most trusted friend, Abu Bakr, to figure out the truth. Abu Bakr confirmed the message, and then Abdurrahman embraced Islam without a single second of hesitation. The crucial takeaway here is his incredibly decisive nature. He recognized the truth instantly. Keep in mind, at this time, accepting this message meant risking his entire business, alienating his wealthy clients, and totally jeopardizing his high status in society. But for him, the truth was just infinitely more valuable. Section 3. Starting from zero. But listen, every true conviction comes with a cost. And for him, the price was literally everything he owned. Just look at this stark contrast. When the persecution in Mecca just became unbearable, the Muslims were forced to migrate to Medina. Think about this. The wealthiest merchant in Mecca abandons his entire empire. He walks away from a lifetime of immense wealth, massive trading caravans, properties, inventory, all of it. He arrives in Medina with absolutely nothing. No shop, no servants, zero capital. All he had was his pure trust in Allah. It's a terrifying scenario for literally any business person, essentially having your life's work wiped out overnight. To help the new arrivals get on their feet, the Prophet instituted this beautiful system of brotherhood, pairing a migrant with a local helper in Medina. Abdurrahman was paired with Saad bin Rabi, a seriously wealthy local, and Saad made what is honestly an incredibly generous, historically unprecedented offer. He offered to split his entire estate, his money, his massive lush date gardens, right down the middle, and just hand half of it over to Abdurrahman. And this moment right here brilliantly illustrates his unmatched self-reliance and integrity. He smiled and gave this absolutely legendary response. "May Allah bless your wealth. Just show me the way to the market." He completely refused the free money. He didn't want a handout. He knew his own skill, he knew his insane work ethic, and all he needed was directions to where the commerce was happening. Section 4. The Honest Trader. So, how exactly do you build an empire from absolutely nothing? Well, step by step. He started incredibly small, literally just buying and selling tiny amounts of dates, ghee, and butter in the local market. But he meticulously reinvested those tiny daily profits instead of inflating his lifestyle, which allowed his capital to snowball and compound. Before long, his small trades grew into local caravans, and then major international caravans that were once again reaching Yemen, Syria, and Bahrain. He essentially reconstructed a sprawling, massive trade empire from absolute zero. Pretty soon, people in Medina started saying the exact same thing they used to say back in Mecca. The dust in his hands turns to gold. But there was no magic involved here. His most profitable, foundational business strategy was simply trust. He never lied about his products. If there was a defect, he pointed it out immediately. His absolute, uncompromising honesty made him the most sought-after and trusted partner in all of Arabia. And when you're the most trustworthy person in the market just naturally gravitates entirely towards you. Section 5. Unmatched Generosity. This next part is really the core of why we're studying him today. It juxtaposes his incredible earning power with his radical charity. On the left, we've got his massive profits, his lands, his livestock. But look over at the right side. He didn't just hoard it all. He used this vast wealth to fund entire armies during critical moments of vulnerability for the early Muslims. He freed countless slaves, literally buying their freedom outright. He took on the financial responsibility of caring for the Prophet's wives after the Prophet passed away. And get this, on more than one occasion, he literally gave away half of his total wealth in one go. He viewed wealth purely as a trust. It was something placed in his hands by Allah, meant to be actively distributed, not passively hoarded in a vault. And these weren't just one-off grand gestures for the history books either. He made this a daily practice. He never turned away the poor. His doors were famously kept wide open for any travelers who needed food or just a place to rest. Whenever the community had a financial need, he was always the very first to raise his hand. And crucially, despite having riches that rivaled literal kings, he maintained total humility and simplicity. If you sat with him, you honestly wouldn't be able to distinguish the billionaire merchant from his own workers. Immense wealth did not corrupt his character for a single second. Because of this perfect balance, being fiercely successful in worldly business while maintaining absolute spiritual purity and generosity, he achieved something incredible. He was granted the ultimate guarantee. He became one of the 10 companions, the Ashara Mubashara, who were explicitly promised paradise by the Prophet while they were still walking the earth. It is the ultimate proof that business and faith, when they're done with pure integrity, are absolutely not mutually exclusive. Section 6. A Golden Legacy. He passed away at the age of 72 around the year 32 AH. The funeral prayer was led by the Caliph Uthman, and he was buried in the famous Janatil Baqi cemetery. What's truly inspiring about this is that even in his final moments, his only real concern was his afterlife and ensuring his wealth was directed to the poor and needy. He wasn't obsessing over his businesses or his profit margins on his deathbed. Which brings us all the way back to that incredible detail we started with. Upon his death, he left an estate of such unimaginable scale. The raw gold was so plentiful that his executors literally had to bring in axes to chop the blocks of gold apart, just so it could be distributed to the poor, to the widows, and to his heirs. His wives inherited a designated fraction, yet that fraction was so massive they instantly became some of the wealthiest women of their entire era. And every single bit of this was built entirely on honest, halal trade. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Look at Abdurrahman bin Aouf. The greatest, most successful merchant in history wasn't great because of the gold he hoarded, but because of the countless lives he elevated. So ask yourself, does your definition of wealth measure what you keep or what you give away? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible story with me. Let it reshape how you see success.